So I guess the topic speaks to some of us, from fear to love. It's a timely topic here everywhere, but especially here in the States, right? But everywhere, for the whole planet. I have a Hafiz poem. I was thinking that a poem would be nice to start off with. I love these Persian poets. Do you? Rumi, Hafiz, there's so many of them. Love is the funeral pyre where I have laid my living body. All the false notions of myself that once caused fear, pain, have turned to ash as I neared God. What has risen from the tangled web of thought and sinew now shines with jubilation through the eyes of angels and screams from the guts of infinite existence itself. Love is the funeral pyre where the heart must lay its body. Again, the last part. Love is the funeral pyre where the heart must lay its body. So this is a wonderful synopsis of how we move from fear to love. Would you agree? And I love how Hafiz doesn't shy away from intensity. He says, screams, this love that we are is not just made of beauty and angelic in nature, but that infinite existence screams. So this is, this is reality. So the way that I see it is that everything is actually love. And some of it is in disguise. Some of it is confusion, right? How can we say that? How can we say that everything in the end is love? In the same way that we can say that in the end everything is the divine. And that's what we're growing towards with our understanding. We're growing towards understanding that every single thing in existence, the beauty and that which screams in agony, that these polarities, so-called polarities, are the divine. Isn't that what the understanding of unity points to? And that's resolving this paradox of duality. We can't really understand it with our minds. It's through our hearts that we understand. The mind is it helps us with being able to navigate this reality. The mind helps us understand contrast. But within that, it sets up this dichotomy of what is allowed and not allowed, what is permissible and not permissible, what is beautiful, what is ugly. The comparison, right? And a lot of that is important for us to be able to survive. But ultimately, you can't divide up God. You can't divide up the divine and say some things are more divine than others. It's just not true. We might, definitely like some things more than others. Enjoy some things more than others. Wish for some things more than others. I certainly do. This morning, I even had a little cry about what's happening, on the planet. I do like to listen to some news. I like to stay informed. I don't overrun myself with it, but I like to stay informed with some different people. And this morning, earlier, I was listening to Noam Chomsky. Do you know who he is? A brilliant elder. And just the way that he was speaking, about the planetary crisis, it just made me cry. I mean, how can one not? How can one not be affected? We'd really have to be out to lunch. Sorry, but it's not like you have to follow the news. But the truth is we're all interconnected and we feel one another. And we feel one another on a deep, deep level, on a psychological level, emotional level, and on a physical level. And our bodies are made of the earth. They're made of that same elements of the earth. So we feel the earth as well, whatever the earth is going through. And like Johanna Macy, who I really admire, another elder, wise elder, Johanna Macy, she talks about and has spoken for 20 years about the grief, collective grief body. That oftentimes we feel like it's a personal grief, and of course we have our own personal grief. But on a collective level, we're also feeling grief. And to admit that and to open to that can be very healthy because it helps bring understanding to the body-mind about what might be going on. The survival of our species, the survival of many species is at stake. We know that, right? Really, it's a real crisis. But it also it can push us evolutionarily to make different choices and to grow. And although all of us here are wanting to make a choice, we wouldn't be here. Wanting to make a choice for opening to love, for deeply feeling one another, for not shying away from being exposed vulnerably to reality. Because opening up to reality, which is the divine, unobscured, unveiled, as much as we can in our bodies, right? Because we'll always be slightly veiled, because we're going to be perceiving life through this human organism. We can't help it. That's just our sensing body is what we come in with, just like a tree has its own sensing body, and flowers have their sensing body. Can you imagine being a flower, what that might be like? A rock has its own sensing body, right? So everything, every sentient thing, which is everything in creation, is going to perceive life through its medium. Does that make sense? So no matter how clear we get and how much the me sense, which obscures reality, how much it I don't know, just fades away, thins out. There will still be a medium through which we're perceiving life. Life is perceiving itself, let's put it that way. And as this veil of obscuration thins out, the more that we are directly impacted by life. Does that make sense? So we become less protected. Isn't it funny how often, and I'm sure I was the same as most of us here, that we go towards spirituality in a way to just feel better. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? And there's a truth to it, right? Because as conditioning falls away and our traumas get more healed and there's less of a me sense, there's a lot of freedom that emerges. So there is real truth to it. But on the other side of that is the fact that we just feel more. We sense our sensing being that's not operating through mind protecting it. It directly encounters itself. It encounters life directly. And the impact of it is huge. But by then, when that really happens, we've been well trained to be able to handle it. I think actually sometimes it takes years for us to really be able to open to an immense loss, for instance. Like, let's say someone close and dear to you dies. It's taking me years to deal with my brother's death. Years. Because the more that I become emptied, the more the impact of the reality affects me, hits me. Does that make sense? The less protection that I have, or one would have, to feel the direct truth of things. We can't live in la la land, making up stories, including our belief systems. A lot of our belief systems can be stories, right? To coping strategies to be able to deal with life. Do you all know that? Are you aware of that? And it's not to make it wrong, right? None of this is to make it wrong. It's just about truth telling. But truth telling, really where it lands you is being right here. I like to say being naked. Just the encounter is like being naked, right? Right here. So who still wants to sign up for this? Good, let's see some hands. Yay. A truth party. Yeah, for many people, as someone here said, there's no way back. So at some point, there's a way you can actually go back. How many here also, I like to do this sometimes, it's like find out. So it brings us together, you know. How many here feel like it's too late to turn around and say that you want something different? go back into your belief systems. Yeah, I get it. I know. I understand. It's like this momentum of what some people like Almas, Hamid Ali, with the Diamond Heart, he calls the enlightenment drive. He might not be the only one, that has used that term, but the enlightenment drive, well, you've heard what people have said, like, first we chase truth, and then truth chases us. So first we're like dancing with this, truth, and like, oh, this is so romantic, and this is so nice, and I'm feeling better and better every day. And then at some point, truth comes back and starts to chase us, and we're like, oh my God, all the things that truth is asking of me to give up and to let go and to surrender and to face and sober up to, right? We can't hide anymore. It's like, it's just like, it's the light of God, the divine light, shining its own light in all its corners. Okay. And it's out of love. And I said, so what else is going on here? Where else am I hiding, I found you, got you. And it's love shining a light on itself, on love, saying, out of love, I want to reveal this. Out of love, I want to expose this part. And it doesn't always feel good, right? There's a bit of, But also there's something, as we go further down the road, there's something that we end up falling in love with this journey. And so, Hafizi says, screaming existence. Well, what is he talking about? It's that, it hurts so much to be in denial. It hurts so much for things to be unconscious to themselves. And it hurts each other, and it hurts innocent creatures, and it hurts the earth itself for unconsciousness to keep going on. And that's where we're at, is facing our deep, deep, deep unconsciousness, like the unwillingness to tell the truth, the unwillingness to see things as they are. And the only, yes, we vote, and yes, we do what we can, right? We take care of one another as best we can when we have extra to give. That's what we can do, right? But what else we can do is clear ourselves out and heal ourselves and wake up to the unconsciousness that's right here. That's our individual journey that we gift the collective. Does that make sense? So that's not self-centered. I mean, sometimes, I've seen people kind of go around in circles with process inside, if that makes sense, of like continually examining their own navel. And that can have some me identification in there. Like, I'm improving, I'm growing, I'm emptying out, I'm clearing, And there's nothing really wrong with that. It's just that collectively we don't really have time to just do that. Does that make sense? It's like we don't have like 100 or 200 or 300 years to clear out our own navel. Sorry to be so graphic. and not come together in a community kind of way to care for one another and to care for the planet. It's like we're being asked right now, in my opinion, you don't have to agree. I don't know what it would look like for anyone, but we're being asked to be able to not only take care of ourselves, to grow up. Because that can be a cycle too, of like me cycle, you know? This me journey, this me on a spiritual journey cycle. That there's a lot of me in there. And part of me is kind of like, let's get over ourselves. Continue the work, continue being honest, having the light shine on itself all the way. But maybe take a look and see where maybe there's some me identification in that healing journey, me identification in the spiritual journey. Does this make sense? I know that it's kind of intense to say this, because I don't mean to make anyone wrong. I really don't. But it actually, that's why, like in, you've heard of the word seva, service. It's a Hindu word, like karma yoga. So karma yoga, the idea of it is that one works for the well-being of others, because the fascination with oneself can get in the way, the over-fascination. Make sense? Okay. So just maybe take a look at that, because it can be a very seductive loop to be always working on ourselves constantly. A project, an ongoing me project. I don't know what it would look like to get off the treadmill of the me project. That's up to you to maybe take a look at. Okay, so let's see, coming back to the topic, from fear to love. Well, we've been on topic. Fear divides. Uh-oh, can you guys hear me? Uh-oh, okay, so Shar said I've gone quieter. Okay, I want to make sure I'm not too quiet. So why are we so unkind to one another and so unkind to ourselves? Starts with ourselves, right? Always. No matter what horrible things people are doing out there, these dictators and horrible people on the planet, right? From politicians all the way down to someone in a home that's mistreating someone, right? No matter who it is, it wouldn't be happening if there was an unconsciousness and self-loathing on some deep, deep level. Of course, there's the 1%, they say, that has no empathy. You've heard of that? Anybody? It was a revelation when I heard it. It was like, oh my God, there's 1%. That's quite a bit, when you think of the population. It doesn't have empathy. That's horrible. And unfortunately, that 1%, quite a few of them are helping run the world. So no empathy. Let's leave that aside. I don't know what to do with that. That makes no sense to my system. But all other reactions and actions that are unkind that arise out of fear, it comes out of deep, deep pain and self-loathing. Does that make sense? I mean, how could you do otherwise? And each one of us knows this because we're humans. We have that in ourselves. Whenever I've been unconscious, unkind, which, I think has gotten much better. It was always, always out of something that wasn't seen, that wasn't liberated, that was ignorant to itself. And so this is what that light of the divine, what it reveals, that can be so painful, when it shines on itself. And it's like, what are you doing? And even like playing victim. I'm not saying that there are times when we really are victims. I'm not speaking about that. I'm talking about when we have an identity inside of being a victim and continuing the story. That's a very unkind story to oneself. So this is what we're here to liberate, all these stories, all these beliefs that separate, that cause harm. I mean, many of us we'll shake our heads and it's like, how can people be so ignorant? Right? And be racist, misogynistic, homophobic, all the things, right? Well, we know ignorance in ourselves, so it behooves us to have some understanding, to try to understand somewhat in terms of how fear, how it can color the way we see life. What it is fear of people being different from oneself. Really sad, huh? Really sad, the pain that fear causes, and the pain that self-loathing causes. The pain that we, and soon open it up, but the pain that our own misunderstanding, this is a big one, our own misunderstanding about what form is, what the body is, which has been the body and form is matter, and matter in Latin is mater, which means mother. I mean, what have we done to Mother Earth? What we perceive as form, right? It's deeply embedded in us. This fear of matter, of form, and of the feminine. Look what we've done throughout the ages to the feminine nature in men and women. No blame. It is just this deep misunderstanding of what the divine is. And it comes from this fear of impermanence, the fear of death. And form represents, in our deep unconscious, it represents death. The feminine mater, represents death. So can you understand, if you don't have a deep understanding of what form is divine, and that impermanence also is the divine, and that matter, even though it goes, is the divine. Can you understand how we might be punishing and hurting and voiding out that which is representational of death? Because we don't have a peace, we don't understand death. We're deeply fearful of death. Isn't that amazing? So the earth, our bodies, everything that represents impermanence and time is people are afraid of on the deepest level. So can you understand why it's being treated the way it is? Why it's being destroyed? Isn't that amazing? So this is us needing to come to terms in our own selves. How do you feel about this body, your body? How do you feel about time? How do you feel about impermanence, things going and coming? What is your relationship to time? And we, as this group right now, that is like some of the most heartfelt people, representational of heart right here. Representational of wanting to do right and to love, right? And be a good person, and to evolve and wake up. And still, you can feel inside, like where maybe the work still lies within yourself, of your relationship to yourself, to the body, to that which goes. Okay? See how important this is? This is the root of fear. This is the very, very foundation of where fear emerges from. It's our own mortality, death, survival. This is like the basic, right? And from there, all these other layers of how fear manifests emerges. And so that's one of the reasons why realization and, what people call waking up, which I don't really use that word that much. But let's say remembering. I like the word remembering. And this is why remembering your intrinsic wholeness with totality. Remembering that we are a part of nature, that we are one with. This really comes from the heart. This is the love. That remembering, it relaxes the system. And it puts things in context, okay? Within the divine, there's time. The divine is everything. It's absolutely everything. It includes every single thing, includes fear, it includes time, includes form. The divine has a timeless quality to it, and apparently it has time also within it. Nothing would have been created. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for time. If it weren't for impermanence, things get born and things return back to source. Things emerge from source and they return back. And this is our work, is to bring understanding to our system, to open up the awareness to this truth. And it really does relax the nervous system. Yeah, of course, we'll still have a preference for being here and for our loved ones to be here. But there won't be this grip. So this is, just real quick, coming back to like how people are manifesting right now, this a lot of division in life. It all arises out of fear. And those who are less divided are less fearful. It's pretty simple. So even though they may not think of themselves as being spiritual per se, the ones that are less divided, there's something in them that actually feels connected, more connected to the whole. And that's what's showing. So we just have our own individual part to play. Take a deep breath. It's a lot of stuff. And it's like I can't help but say it. It's like, it's so damn difficult on so many levels. But there's another part where at the same time there's like this, the universe at some places is really giggling. I hate to say it. I'd like to say it. I don't want to say it. It seems blasphemous to say it. But it's both and. It's difficult, and there's another part where the universe is just sort of giggling to itself. Maybe you can find it in yourself at times. Do people here sometimes find it within yourself to be joyful for no reason? Just joyful for no reason? Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Give yourself permission. You can get back to being serious another moment if you want. Love pervades. Love is real. And even if all this disappears, love is the foundation. So it's kind of like being able to go from micro to macro, macro to micro. Micro meaning the human with a felt sense, with all our cares and our concerns. Yeah? Deeply feeling, maybe following what's happening on the politically, whatever. The micro. And then there's the macro, which is like a backward step, and it takes in the big picture. And then the big picture is totality. The micro is contained in this totalness. And it's not a coping strategy. It's an aspect of truth that both simultaneously exist. The micro and the macro. They both exist. If we're too micro, we're going to suffer. Does that make sense? If we're leaning too far into our personal reality, we're just going to be suffering and we don't know any different. That's called really being identified with the me, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to loosen. And then the macro is like, yes, the me is included, and what else is going on? Oh, there's lots of space over here. Oh, look at the beautiful sunlight hitting this tree. The clouds right now in the sky, the stars, and multiple realities occurring. Love is here. Love is always here. All is well. if we don't have that balance in our lives where we get to stick, they call it in Zen the backward step, where you take a backward step and you take a bigger view. If we don't have that inside, we're going to be suffering quite a bit. And that's part of the practice of spirituality. Make sense? Form and emptiness. But there is a love affair for form. And maybe we can start to tell ourselves the truth that we really do love being here, and that we love our lives as best we can, and others the way they are. Okay. Let's see who might have left me a message. Yeah. So, there's the in the micro, there's still the taking care of self and the healing of that. Someone wrote a little comment about that. So how do we get stuck in that? Well, I think part of the reason why we get stuck in that, because someone wrote a little comment about feeling stuck in healing the me, is when we don't have perspective of a vaster nature, honestly. Most of my healing, there was a lot that happened before, different realizations, lots of ahas and healing and openings. But most of it happened afterwards because there was this love that naturally went towards itself. And, it went towards the suffering that existed here. And it wasn't afraid to go towards it. It was like a beacon. And I think that when we have more of a sense of the macro, that we're really a part of totality, we are the totality, then it's easier for healing to happen. We're not as identified with ourselves in need of healing. So that which needs healing, there's more potential for love to move towards it. It's more spacious. Does that make sense? So that's why I think that, yeah, keep working on yourself, sure, but take a backward step. Put things more in context, back and forth. If someone is too far in the emptiness zone, I always bring them more into their humanity. It's sort of this balancing act, And if someone is too identified with their suffering and the me and everything, it's kind of like, let's lean back together into this vaster spaciousness that doesn't need to be in control and doesn't need to know everything.
This podcast is made possible by the support of appreciative listeners. If you would also like to support the work of Susanna Marie, there is a donate button on the pages of susannamarie.org. Thank you for listening.